We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Zayin Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 97b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara said that if it's wine that cannot be used for Nisach HaYayin on the Mizbeach, then it should not be used for Kiddush. And the Gemara said, well, what exactly are we coming to exclude? It can't be grape juice, because grape juice, even though it's not supposed to be used for Nisach HaYayin on the Mizbeach, but b'diavad it is good for Nisach HaYayin on the Mizbeach, and therefore for Kiddush, even L'chatchila would be fine. And the Gemara continues along those lines, Diyamar Rava, because Rava says, Sochet Adam Eshkol Shel Anavim, a person can squeeze from a cluster of grapes. V'yomer Olav Kiddush Hayom, he could say Kiddush on that, even though it's grape juice, it's not wine. That's perfectly acceptable for Kiddush. And so the Gemara continues, rather, what we're coming to exclude is, let's say you take from the very top, the mouth of the barrel, or let's say from the bottom of the barrel where all the sediment is, that's not the best quality wine. Both from the top and the bottom are not the best quality. So maybe that's being excluded. You shouldn't use that for Kiddush. But that's not true either. V'atani Rabbi Chia, but Rabbi Chia taught, mipia umishuleh, from the mouth of the barrel or from the bottom of the barrel, lo yavi, he shouldn't bring in terms of nisach hayayin. V'imhevi kosher, but if he does b'diavad, it's kosher. And like we said, if it's okay b'diavad for nisach hayayin, it certainly would be okay even lechatchila when it comes to Kiddush. And so the Gemara continues, Ve'ela rather, lemu'ute yayin kushi, we're coming to exclude black wine. These are all going to be inferior kinds of wine. Or borek, which is a kind of white wine that's a bad wine. Or hillestone, which the Rashbam says hillestone is yayin masuk. It's a very sweet wine, v'cholashmod, a very weak kind of wine. Or shel marte, for wine that comes from the wine cellar. We'll see the Rashbam in a moment. Or shel tzimukim, or let's say the wine comes from raisins. That's what we're coming to exclude. And the Rashbam says shel marte, if it comes from the wine cellar, kilomar stam yayin shel martif shelo nivdak. What it means is you take it from the cellar and it was never inspected, so it wasn't clear that it wasn't souring. Umisham deika chavias kosesos, like we said before, you have barrels that are beginning to sour. That's similar to yayin hanimkar bechanus, the wine that's sold in the store beginning to sour. Kenitnan masnisin kamrin and delo yavi. That's why you shouldn't really bring it. Umiu, and nevertheless, as we're about to say, imhevi kosher. But if you do bring it for nisach yayin, it's okay. V'afagav damrin besamach the yayin koses puzzle in nesachim. Now, even though we're going to say that yayin koses is actually not good for nesachim, hani mili bevadai. That's if you know for sure that it's yayin koses. Aval hacha, but over here where it's just coming from the wine cellar, it's not 100% clear that it's koses. Miyemar du koses. Who says that it's really koses? And again, simukim is parchile anavim yaveshim. That's essentially raisins, dried out grapes. V'yasa mehan yayin. He made wine from them. And so therefore maybe you'll say all of these kinds are going to be excluded when it comes to Kiddush. The Gemara says, no, Vatanya, but we learned in a Brisa that that's not true, but Kulam lo yavi, like we just said in the Rashbam. All of these different kinds of wine, he shouldn't lechatchila use it for yayin nesach. He shouldn't lechatchila use it for the nesachim on the Mizbeach. However, v'imhevi kosher, but if he does use it, it's going to be kosher. And so therefore, again, that should be good for Kiddush. So still we have to find out what are we excluding from Kiddush. And the Gemara says, V'yela lemu'uta yayin koses. Rather, what we're coming to exclude is yayin koses. That's, again, the wine that is beginning to sour, that we know for sure is beginning to sour. And also mazug, let's say it's mazug. Mazug means to say that it's diluted with water. Or megula, let's say it's wine that was left uncovered. There's a concern that maybe the venom of a snake got into the wine. V'shel shemarim, or let's say it's made from the sediments, meaning essentially temed. You poured water over the sediments. V'sherecho ra, or let's say the wine smells bad. All of those cases will not be good for Kiddush. And the Gemara continues, the Tanya, as we learned in the Brisa, but kulan lo yavi, for all these kinds of wine that we just mentioned, he shouldn't lechatchila bring it on the Mizbeach, v'imhevi, and if he does, puzzle, then it will be disqualified. That means even b'diavad it's bad, and therefore it should not be used for Kiddush. And the Rashbam explains, yayin koses, again, that's wine that's beginning to sour, hu yayin hanimkar bechanus. That's the same as the wine we mentioned earlier, talked about wine that's being sold in the store, that's considered to be beginning to sour. Hu puzzle, that is disqualified, lo have a shecher, v'lo roy lios shecher. That's not intoxicating, and it's not anymore going to be intoxicating even in the future. Kiyayin miguto, that's not the same as, let's say, wine straight from the wine press to sofa miolios shecher. That eventually will be able to be intoxicating. So that's at a better level in terms of the quality of wine, but that's not true by yayin koses. And mazuk again means diluted. Eino bechlal shecher. That also is not considered like it's intoxicating. When you're pouring on the Mizbeach, it has to be chai. It can't be diluted when it goes on the Mizbeach. V'yayin megula, let's say it's uncovered wine. There's a concern maybe a snake drank from it. Shel shmar means temed. Again, that's temed. That means you poured the water through the sediments. V'sherecho rar, it smells bad. Musrach aval yesh bo tam yayin. It means it smells bad. However, it still does have the taste of wine. Again, all of these cases, these might be cases that are excluded from from Kiddush. But the Gemara continues, Lemu'utei Mai, but now we have a whole list over here of possible things that are excluded for Kiddush, but which one of them is really being excluded? And the Rashbam explains, Lemu'utei Mai Mehani Psulim, which of these things that are disqualified for Yayin Nesech, the Hach Braisa of this Braisa, Asa Rav Lemu'utei, which one of them is Rav coming to exclude? And the Gemara continues, Ilemu'utei Koses, if you're going to say we're excluding Koses, which again is the wine that's beginning to go sour, but that's not easy to exclude because Pluksud Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, that we said already earlier, is actually a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. And the Rashbam here explains, Ilema Lemu'utei Yain Koses, if you're going to say we're excluding Yain Koses, Asalamemer, if that's what Rav is coming to exclude, De'ein Omer Olav Kiddush Hayom, that you don't say Kiddush on Yain Koses, Habore Pri Hagafen Mevorchen, that would imply that you do make a bracha Bore Pri Hagafen. In other words, if you're saying it's not good for Kiddush, what do you mean it's not good for Kiddush? That would imply that there is a Bore Pri Hagafen, just you shouldn't use it for Kiddush, but that wouldn't make sense. Why would that be true? Haplugsud Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi Hillel, that's already a machlokus between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Till Rabbi Yochanan Chamrahu, Rabbi Yochanan says it's considered wine. When you have Yain Koses, it's fully considered wine. The Afilu Leinian Kiddush Shaper Dami, this is what we had earlier on Daf Tzadivav. Daf Tzadivav Amad Aleph, even for Kiddush it's going to be good. To Kevan Delagabe Truma Chashav Leyayin, because again this was a situation where regarding Truma we said that it's considered to be wine. So Huadin Lagabe Kiddush, so the same should be true when it comes to Kiddush. The Loshna Kiddush Mi Bori Pri Hagafen, because Kiddush is not going to be different from Bori Pri Hagafen, El Leinian Mius, except for the issue of the fact that it might be disgusting to use. We're going to bring this pasuk later on. We're going to say, would you bring it to your governor? Well, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, so that's in terms of Rabbi Yochanan. In terms of Rabbi Yochanan, it's obvious that the Yain Koses, you should be able to say Kiddush. And according to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Chalu, it's considered vinegar, we said earlier. V'afilu Bori Pri Hagafen in Mevarchin. You don't make even Bori Pri Hagafen, K'da Amr Le'el, like we said earlier. V'svir like Rabbi Yochanan. Now, if he held like Rabbi Yochanan, Hachi Havalei L'Memra, he should have said, Mevarchin Olav Bori Pri Hagafen. You make a bracha Bori Pri Hagafen. V'ano Amina Duhu Adin LeKiddush. And I say that the same is true when it comes to Kiddush. V'ik Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Svirle. And if he held like Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Hachi Havalei L'Memra, he should have said, Ein Mevarchin Olav Ela Shahakal. He should have said, you make a bracha of Shahakal. Don't say that you don't make Kiddush. You should go further and say that there's not even a Bori Pri Hagafen over here. So it can't be that Rav was intending on excluding Yain Koses, because again, then it would just be dependent on the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. And the Gemara continues, Ilam Ute Mazuk, if Rav is coming to exclude when it's diluted wine and saying that's not good for Kiddush, but that's not true either. Iluye Alya, there you've actually improved the quality of the wine when you dilute it. The idea is that the Gemara is saying, when it comes to pouring it on the Mizbeach, so you specifically don't dilute the wine, because no one is really drinking it in that situation, but when you're really drinking the wine, when you're using it for Kiddush, on the contrary, you're supposed to dilute it. As the Gemara continues, Damar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, because Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, Modim Chacham Rabbi Eliezer, the Chacham admit to Rabbi Eliezer, because shal bracha, that when it comes to the kos shal bracha, when you're making Kiddush, she'ein mevarchen alav ad she'itein lasocho mayim, that on the contrary, you don't make the bracha until you put water in. And the Rashbam explains, Iluye alya lekiddush, you're actually enhancing it for Kiddush. Modim Chacham Rabbi Eliezer, the pligi benisach u'mechashe b'mazuk, because there's a machlokus when it comes to nisach hayayin in terms of whether you can use diluted. And the Rashbam says, I don't know exactly where they have this machlokus, but it seems there's this machlokus tanoim, but they admit that she'itein mayim lasochu, when it comes to kos shel bracha, on the contrary, you're supposed to put water in there, because people don't drink it when it's raw, they don't drink it when it's undiluted. Elamazuk, they drink it specifically when it is diluted. The Rashbam says this is talking about the old wine that they had in those days, the daro al chada telasamai, like we said, the ratio over there was 1 to 3 in terms of water to wine, and so therefore it can't be that we're excluding when it's diluted wine. On the contrary, there certainly would be good for the bracha of Kiddush. And so the Gemara continues, Ilamute Megula. Now, if you're going to say that he's coming to exclude when it's uncovered, and so therefore there's the concern again that the venom of the snake is in there, so sakanahi, so that's already a danger in such a situation, and if it's dangerous in such a situation, it's obvious you're not going to use it for Kiddush. As the Rashbam explains, sakanu, it's dangerous, va'afila below Kiddush, even forget about Kiddush. Asr l'shtosa would be asr to drink it altogether, so it can't be he's coming to exclude something that you can't drink at all. And the Gemara continues, Ila mu'ute shel shmarim, if he's coming to exclude, let's say you have temed, you pour the water through the sediment of the grapes. So hechidami, so what exactly are we talking about? Idarama telasav yasarba. This goes back to what we were discussing earlier. If the amount of water was 3 cups that went in and then 4 cups came out, so chamra ma'alihu, that's perfectly good wine. Certainly it's used for kiddush. And idarama telasav yasa telaso palg, if the case is that 3 cups of water went in and 3.5 went out, that we had a machlokas earlier, pluksa de rabbanan ve'acherim, that's already a machlokas tanoim between the rabbanan and the acherim. So ela lemuute sharecho ra. So the Gemara says rather you have to say what Rav was coming to exclude was when the wine smells bad. That's the kind of wine that he's specifically coming to exclude from kiddush. And the Gemara continues by saying, if you want, I could say another answer. Liolim lemute megula. Maybe he's really coming to exclude when it's uncovered. And when it's uncovered, it's not good for kiddush. Now the question was, well, if it's uncovered, it's not even good to drink at all. And so the Gemara says, no. V'afagav davrinam b'mesanenes. The case over here is that he put it through a filter, and therefore he was able to actually remove the venom if there was any venom. Reb Nechemia, like Reb Nechemia says, when you put it in a mesanenes, when you put it in a strainer, that actually removes the venom from the snake, and so there actually would not be a problem of drinking it in general, according to Reb Nechemia. But nevertheless, nevertheless, you shouldn't use it when it comes to kiddush. If you bring that to your governor, would he accept it? The idea being that you shouldn't bring that for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you shouldn't use that for a kos shel bracha. And the Gemara continues, by Minei Rav Kahana, Chamud Rav Mesharshia me Rava. Rav Kahana was the father-in-law of Rav Mesharshia. He asked Rava the following question: Chamar chivaryon mahu. Let's say you have white wine. What would be the halacha? Now we mentioned white wine before, but this is a different kind of white wine, as the Rashbam here says. Chamar chivaryon mahu l'nesachim. First, the Rashbam says the question is white wine for nesachim, for pouring on the mizbeach. V'yesh mefarshim l'kiddush. Some say the question here is, can you use it for kiddush? V'lo nehira, but the Rashbam says that doesn't seem to be correct. What's chamar chivarya? And the Rashbam says nira be'enai dahainu yayin borik. So the Rashbam says it's exactly the same as yayin borik, the Tanya Leil that we had in the Brisa earlier, which also we translated as white wine. So it said lo yaviv im hevi kosher. Now if it's exactly the same, we've already answered this question. It said you can't use it lechatchila, but b'diavad, if you bring it on the mizbeach, it's okay. Uvraisa lo shmiele. So according to this, you'll have to say that he didn't hear the Brisa. There are others that say the chamar chivaryan is not exactly the same as yayin borik, but in any case, that's the question of the Gemara. What is the halach in terms of putting this on the mizbeach? Amar Lei said to him, Altera yain ki yasadim. So the wine, what's considered wine that really intoxicates, that you should stay away from, the pasuk is saying you should stay away from it if you want to stay away from becoming intoxicated and doing averis. It's ki yasadim. It's only if it's red wine, and so therefore that's considered the real kind of wine. But if it's chamer chivaryan, it's not the kind of wine that should go on the mizbeach. And the Rashbam explains, Altera yain l'shtoso ki yasadim shemeshaker yoser midai. The red wine causes a person to be intoxicated. Alma yain edom kodem l'nesachim the shecher ksibuhu. So you see that really red wine, that's the one that you should use for nesachim. You should use for the libations on the mizbeach, because again, that is intoxicating, and so that's really what should be used on the mizbeach. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, kankanim b'sharon. If somebody is buying jugs in Sharon, v'chulu, etc., it said that the buyer has to assume that 10 out of 100 will be of inferior quality. And the Gemara says Tana was taught pitasos nos umugufaros. We're talking about these inferior quality jugs that they're nice and they're sealed with pitch. And the Rashbam here explains, Tana pitasos da amran de mekablan eser lakuf. When we say in the Mishnah he has to accept 10 inferior quality among 100, einon shavuros uruos mamish. He doesn't have to accept if they're actually really bad and broken. If that's how bad they are, you don't even have to accept one like that. Ela knows kashar kedeiro shebesharon. Rather, it means that they were nice like the other ones in Sharon. Umugufaros begafras, and then you use pitch to seal them up. Va'agafras sosim es hashever. The pitch seals up whatever is broken. Umechabro ksas, it attaches it a little. V'yachol nishtamish ben ksas, you can use it a little. Ela shein miskaymin zman meru. But the point is, it's not going to contain whatever is in there. It's not going to keep it fresh for a long time, kishleiman, like ones that aren't broken at all. Since it's not totally broken, that's when we say that the buyer has to accept 10 bad ones for every 100. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hamocher yayin l'chaveiro v'hechmetz. If somebody sells wine to his friend and it becomes vinegar, it goes sour, eino chayav b'achriyusa, so the seller is not responsible. Now we did have earlier a machlokas amoraim about this, but that machlokas amoraim was talking specifically within the first 3 days. The one who says that the seller is responsible within the first 3 days, so this Mishnah, he would understand this Mishnah is talking after the first 3 days. In any case, the Mishnah says, again, the seller is not responsible. And the Mishnah continues, Vim yodua sheyeno machmer. machmitz. Now, if he knows that his wine has a tendency to become vinegar, hareza mekachtos, that's already considered to be a mistaken purchase, and it is reversed. V'yamamar lo yayin, and if he says to him wine, and the Rashbam explains, eino chayiv hamocher b'achra yuso, the seller is not responsible to v'shas mechira yayin hava, because at the time that he sold it, it actually was wine. It just went bad in the possession of the buyer. V'im yadua sheyeno machmitz, but if it's known that his wine goes bad, meaning b'chol shana, every year it goes bad, hareza mekachtos, that already is a mistaken purchase, and that purchase could be reversed. Kedemuki la b'gemara kedamar le lamikveh. The Gemara is going to say that we're talking here where he sold it to him for the purpose of cooking. Di lo amar le lamikveh, because if he didn't say lamikveh, lama yischai b'achar yuso. So then why should the seller be responsible? Harei haya yachol l'shtoso. The buyer could have just drank it right away. V'lo iboy le l'shuhuye. He should not have delayed. To afilu iruba l'shuhuye zamni. Because even if most people, when they buy, they're intending on delaying, but ein holchen b'mammon achar harov. We don't follow majority when it comes to money. V'kol shekein hashtin, certainly over here, the palga l'shasiyo, palga l'shiyah, where half of it was for drinking and half of it was for delay. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Ches Amud Aleph.